Welcome back to another episode of our Eagle Perspective podcast. I'm Mike Siciliano, Dean of Students of the Upper School. I'm joined today by class of 2015 alum, Faith Hillard. Faith, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to meet you. We actually don't know each other. We have this alumni series that we do, and you were like in my period of not being at Santa Fe. But I've heard so many good things about you.
Thank you.
And we're excited to get to hear from you a little bit. We are in also a new venue for today. This is the first time we've ever done it in this particular space.
A whole new building for me.
Yeah,
I've never seen
for
it.
you. The whole building was constructed because we heard you were coming. So for those who are listening, they might hear a little bit of traffic. We're just trying this space out, so we'll see how it goes. But welcome. So what was it like? I love to ask when we do our alumni ones, what was it like driving up Academy today?
Oh man, it's crazy. My parents still live in the area, so we do go to Tony's Hall quite a bit.
Oh yeah, great spot.
I am in the area, but to go through those gates again and go, talk to the guard, I'm like, hi, I'm here as a visitor. It was so strange.
Yeah.
But that entrance is still the same, but walking up the stairs and seeing how much has changed was wild.
The quad has like a completely different feel.
Yeah,
now.
but it's so cool being back almost 8 years later and being back on campus.
So what does it feel like you walk up the stairs and people have different, like some people immediately go to their best memories. Some people go to like the one horribly embarrassing thing. Like, what was it for you?
It's definitely fond memories, I think, for me. I really enjoyed my time here. And so I think of the senior business week and, when we were out there in the quad. And
what was your business?
We did Jersey Mike subs.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the Jersey Mike subs, and I think we did pretty good.
Yeah.
And I got asked to prom in the quad, and so it's so funny just to like have all these memories and then
I gotta ask who asked you to prom in the quad.
It was Sean LePere. He asked me my junior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a guy.
So it was great. He had the whole saxophone.
Yeah, I love it.
Did a whole musical number.
Yeah.
So
good.
Yeah, lots of fun memories, but it's crazy how much has changed, but at least the quad's still there. I recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, the half the quad was the same for you. I mean, I joke now that because I started in 1992 in lower school, and the only buildings left are the chapel and the lower school.
Yeah.
So give it a few more years.
And then it's just...
you won't recognize anything.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. We love catching up with our alumni and just hearing about their journey. And also, when you have some space away, a little bit of maybe maturity and time to reflect on the way this place impacted you. It's hard to appreciate maybe as a 17-year-old.
Yeah, that's so true.
So why don't you catch everyone up real quick on what your journey's been like since Santa Fe. You graduated in 2015.
I did. And then I went straight into my freshman year at Point Loma Nazarene. So I stayed close. I love San Diego, so I was really grateful to be there, right by the ocean. I studied biology there. Sciences have always been a passion. But I've always kind of leaned in more to the animal side. So they didn't have a specific degree for that. So I would take, animal behavior classes and some marine ecology classes. It was definitely hard because you had all the pre-med kids with you. So those OChem stuff, almost, not that I wanted to completely change my major, but it was a moment of like, is this what I really want to do?
That's all I've ever heard about OChem. Yeah, it makes you question your entire life.
Absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But I kept pushing because I wanted to stay in the animal field, and I knew I needed that degree to get there. Graduated spring or summer of 2019. I did a study abroad in France, which was actually heavily impacted from my time here. Because I went to France with Madame Catania, and I wanted to go back so badly. And so after graduating, I didn't know really what to do. Had this degree in sciences, but I knew I wasn't going pre-med. I wasn't doing lab work. I'm like, how do I start? And I worked for a little bit down at the Del Mar Fair in the infield, teaching composting for the summer.
Love it.
How to compost, how to get started. Love the worms.
The fair thing is such a rite of passage. And I feel like it's because of COVID and the kids now, there might be less of it.
Yeah.
But that like summer before junior year or senior year, I feel like everybody was working at the fair.
Yeah, so it was really fun. And then right after that, I'm like, okay, I need to get a big girl job, and I'm not sure what to do. My now husband, but then boyfriend, sent me a link, and there's a job at SeaWorld in education, which I had already kind of done volunteering in education before, so something I was comfortable with. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. And from there, I started working my way up. And this last year and a couple months, I've been in the aquarium department, working with fish, awesome animals. And so that's kind of job-wise what I've been up to.
Hence
so
the
since
mug?
then, hence the mug, the octopus.
Okay.
I love octopus. I got to work with the giant Pacific octopus for a while.
How big is a giant Pacific octopus?
The one we have is probably about like 5 feet across.
Okay.
He's really massive. He's super strong.
5 feet, like arm to arm?
Arm to arm,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
across.
Gotcha.
Real big boy, but he's
Yeah.
such a sweetheart. You definitely get to see personalities. And when you're out there, it's just you all day. Other areas have like area partners and you've worked with other people. And that area specifically, it's just you and the octopus. And
Like,
so you really bond
So
with the
are
animal.
you like, I mean, like I'd be terrified, and that's just me. Now
Yeah.
I'm not science person. I'm not animal person.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we haven't let our kids get pets, and my wife is allergic to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm also not sad about that.
Yeah,
So, and
yeah.
that's just, and it's not that I don't have a heart. So please,
Oh,
you know, I
no,
shouldn't out
absolutely.
myself.
That's absolutely.
So like, but you have just always been like, as a teenager,
Yeah.
someone would have said, hey, you're going to spend a year in a pool with an octopus.
Oh,
And you'd
would
have been ecstatic.
I would have cried tears of joy. I'm like,
Okay.
I made it. I did it. I did what I wanted to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about well, first of all, part of what brings you back here, it wasn't
Yeah.
just to do the podcast,
Yeah.
right? Am I right? You're actually going to Madame Catanio's class,
Yeah.
who you mentioned earlier,
Yes.
and maybe explain a little bit about that. She's had a big impact on you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So crazy. Just like reminiscing on just how time goes by and how she's stayed so, present in my life. My freshman year here, I was actually going to take a Spanish class. I was going to come in as like a level 2 because I had taken Spanish in middle school. And I was in the class and I'm like, I just feel like I want to do something different and new. So I switched. I signed up for her French class. I jumped in not knowing anything. And I was hooked instantly. I love the way she did the class. And I did it all throughout high school. I took the AP test. I went on the trip with her and got to explore the country for the first time. And
Yeah.
she was such a huge mentor in my life. Even after I graduated high school, we would still meet up with some other friends and get coffees and catch up and talk about, what's going on in our life, what struggles we might have. She helped walk me through, crisis of degrees, like which
Yeah.
should I change my school
Right.
degree, like what should I do? So having her as a mentor was cool. It impacted, my decision to want to do a whole semester abroad in France because
Yeah.
she really instilled that passion for the language and the culture and the country
Yeah.
in me. And
It's such a thing that I feel it's pretty unique and special about Santa Fe, that teacher mentorship. It doesn't stop at graduation.
Absolutely.
To the point where like your friends think it's weird. Right? At
Yeah.
least that's been my experience
Oh,
with like
yeah.
non-Santa Fe people. They're
Yeah.
like, you go to coffee with your high school teacher.
Yeah, they're like,
It's-
that's kind of.
yeah.
And I even had her officiate my wedding. And
Okay,
so when I tell
amazing.
people,
I love it.
She's my high school French teacher's officiating the wedding. They're like, all right. I'm like, you just haven't met her yet. You'll see once
Yeah.
you meet her. You'll understand.
awesome.
So
I love it.
It's been really a huge blessing to
Yeah.
be able to have that relationship.
And then what else brings you back today? You're going to her class today.
Yeah, so I'm going
Okay.
to her class. They were, so part of what they do when they go visit France, they work with other schools. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something I loved too in her French class was getting to talk to French students directly. And so it makes that giant gap of country so much
Right.
closer. And so they're talking about marine ecology and conservation. And so they've prepared stuff to ask questions about for me and want to share maybe just what they've learned.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to cross kind of that bridge of what I'm doing and my passion. And
Yeah.
who's to say what's going to happen in the future? But I really do believe French language and culture is so deep rooted in me now from that freshman year that I would love for it to actually play a part in my job as well.
That's awesome.
Maybe a new Jacques Cousteau or something.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. So, and just to put a little context around that for some of our listeners, she does a project with her French students that is in partnership with students in France at these
Yeah.
schools she's developed, and they get to pick a lot of the topics. And this year they jointly picked the topic of science and conservation, animals and whatnot. And of course she called you. So
Yeah, I'm like,
thank you.
this is perfect.
Thank you for coming in and
I'm so
investing in our
excited.
kids.
Oh, thank you.
So there's a few strands of your story that that stand out to me. There's the science strand, there's the
Yeah.
French strand, which you've talked a lot about,
Yeah.
which, Jenny Catania played a big role in and going on that trip.
Yeah.
And then there's the faith strand. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to
Yeah.
flesh a couple of those other ones out.
Yeah.
Let's start with science.
Yeah.
Were you always a science kid growing up? And then how did Santa Fe help with that, or did it?
Yeah. I was always a science kid.
Okay.
I went through probably all the different options you could before I landed on the ocean. So I was
Okay.
like, I want to go to the moon. I want to go to space. And then I did some research and I was like, you know what? That's a little too scary. No thanks. And then I wanted to be a paleontologist. Throw me in in
Yep.
Egypt with the
Digging stuff
mummies. I
up.
want to dig stuff up. And then I was like, you know what? No, the ocean's for me. So that's where I landed. So I kind of went through all of them. So that's something that I have always been interested in. And my time here too, I think I took Mr. Robinson's oceanography class.
Great class.
And
Yeah.
he did, which is so funny too, because he talked about all his time at SeaWorld, which is funny. That was kind of a crossover. Maybe that subliminally affected me.
Yeah.
Started putting those little roots in there. But it did, because getting to learn sciences in a Christian setting too is greatly impactful, and even continued on when I was looking for colleges, and I still was hungry for that.
Yeah.
At Point Loma, I want to understand my natural world, but know where it came from. And I think people can be nervous about that, shy away from it a little bit, because you're afraid it's going to be a conflict of interest
Yeah.
and that they'll butt heads with each other instead of work together. And so I think that in some ways you do kind of go through your own evolution of sorts of trying to grapple with how everything around me exists and where God, how he played a part in that, and to not be afraid of tough questions or maybe
Yeah.
things that you don't fully understand and maybe won't fully understand. But at the end of the day, it won't change my faith that I know that, God is still Lord and Jesus is, the Son
Yeah.
of God. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important. But this world is so beautiful and so vast, and just to, get to lean into that more. And so I think starting here with sciences and getting that first taste of you can learn these side by side was, I think, really impactful, because you sometimes see polar opposites and you don't
Yeah.
think they can work together.
How has that played out for you in, let's take it SeaWorld, right?
Yeah.
You've been there for a little more than a year now. It's obviously
Yeah.
not a Christian place.
No.
And I don't know if that really comes up much or not. It might come up for you if people are
Yeah.
saying certain things or
Yeah.
whatnot. Do you find that tension is regular, or it's actually not that regular?
What's interesting is I have actually found fellow Christians in the organization, and I do feel like you are able to draw those people to you in a sense, and we kind of find each other. And
Yeah.
so that's what's been really cool is in education or in the aquarium department, you do find those pockets. But you do start to notice it. I think we all care for the animals and we all want the best, but there is that extra level of compassion that's there, or understanding of the creature that you're trying to take care of, and that gives that extra kind of respect and love that maybe is just a little beyond maybe what other people would think.
Yeah.
So I think for me it's you get an animal, a fish or whatever, and it needs treatment, and we were told to care and tend to the earth, and that's almost like a little micro environment of that, because
Yeah.
I've been entrusted to take care of these animals to the best of my ability. And that includes making hard decisions. And, you do it with compassion, and you do everything you can to try and, fix a situation, try treatments. But at the end of the day, you want to have compassion for that animal. And if there's nothing else you can do, you need to make hard choices.
Yeah.
So it's like that duality of tending and caring, but still trying to go after the one. Just if you see one sick animal, not to just be like, whatever, it's just one. You're still going after it. You still want to make it better. And the joy you get, being able to put it back in, its an environment and its tank, and watch it swim. And you're like, yes, I fought for this animal. I had to pull it up every day for injections. I had to cart, hundreds of pounds of water to the vet to do x-rays, and it's finally made it. And so I think with my faith and my job, it does give you that extra kind of, and I think a healthy respect of, this is a living creature, like this is God's animal. I'm going to try and take care of it. But, it's a respect. And I think it's really important to have. And I think at the end of the day, it does kind of set you apart from other people because you take it and you recognize something that other people might not.
That is beautiful. If you don't mind me asking, which because I have the microphone, and we're filming it, you probably wouldn't say if you did. But what has been an example of like a really hard decision you've had to make, either in your career or even just like a hard faith period that you went through post Santa Fe that you'd be comfortable sharing about?
I think one just that's coming like off the top of my head is, so here you go to chapel, once a week. Even in college, we had to go to chapel a certain amount of times. Once graduating, and I didn't have kind of that reason, that incentive, even though I enjoyed going, something that was always kind of pushing me and I was fully on my own, was hard. And I would go, but then COVID happened. And so no one was going anywhere. So I didn't go to church for a while. And I think for a while impacted me. I felt like, I just wasn't as close to God anymore. And it's interesting that you can tell when you're no longer in relationship with someone. And especially in COVID, we were not in relationship with a lot of people. And I think at that time, I was so struggling and trying to lean on him, but at the same time wasn't being fed. And so it just felt really out of balance. And with my job too, which is interesting, weekends are always changing. And so recently I was able to get Sundays off, but now I don't. So I have Friday, Saturdays now are my weekends. So I don't have Sunday to go to the church that I had like finally plugged into. So I would say a big struggle in my faith right now, just after, graduating and getting older, is staying, in church and staying in community and realizing how much I need teachings and encouragements and challenges. And when I don't, I start to feel kind of sluggish. And it's really interesting just how being here and being in college and having that environment all the time. And then when it's on you to do it and life gets in the way and starting to, maybe not prioritize it like you used to, or when sometimes you didn't have a choice and your parents are like, get in the car, we're going to church. And that impacts a lot. Mental health, I think, is a big one too. When things get hard and your first thought is like, oh, I need to go to God about this. But instead you just overthink it and you get bogged down and it can really mess with you. But that's where too, it's been a big blessing having other people who are still rooted. So when you are going through that, my husband sometimes will be like, well, let's pray about that. And I'm like, that's the answer. That's the only answer. But I don't know why I didn't even think about that. And so having that, I think has been really great. But
I think a lot of people will connect with that. It's one of the things when you're here at Santa Fe too, you take for granted things get routine. Things get, and
you're like, I don't want to go this week.
Whatever. And the next thing you know, you haven't been in a while.
And you're like, I'm craving this. I missed this. Why haven't I gone? Right. Or why can't I make this happen?
What are some of the things you remember about Santa Fe, specifically in your spiritual growth, that you look back on and you value?
Oh my gosh, the biggest one was Mr. White when he was here.
Yes, Chris White.
Chris White.
He's in Scotland now.
I know.
Seminary and doing amazing things. So,
he would do a morning prayer. So I would wake up my senior year at 5 a.m., which honestly was great practice because that's what time I have to wake up for work now. And we'd get to campus and we would meet in one of the old classrooms down, I think where Mr. Lyons was. And we would talk about, struggles we're going through, prayer requests, and pray for healing. And I would bring some of my classmates around. And I think that was really huge. That for spiritual impact was just to see that tangible in your fellow classmates and really kind of understand struggles, not just I'm fine, or things are hard, but whatever, moving on, life's great. But to be really real with each other for just an hour or two before school started. And then you're right in your history class and you're, going to math and you jump back into school. But for just that moment to be really real and have fellowship with each other was, I think, hugely impactful. One of my best friends, Holly Bernard, I wasn't friends with her really all of high school. It was that senior year, and I had asked her to go. I was like, hey, do you want to go to this thing? And since then, we've been so close. She was a bridesmaid. We lived together in an apartment before I got married. And that kind of was like the start of that, was like a, come along, let's do this. And it brought us like really close together. Yeah. So that was something that was, I think, very fondly about. That changed, I think, a lot right before graduating high school. That impacted a lot.
What about just standout experiences that, like, things that you look back on, you're like, that was an amazing memory or an amazing experience? You've mentioned the France trip.
Yes.
Which I think it sounds like is number one.
That's a big one. That was, I was that annoying person who wouldn't stop talking about it for like a really embarrassing amount of time.
It paid off. Now we have you on a podcast and we're having you talk about it. So
I would say I can't remember. It had to have been biology, but we went to a company, I think it was called NuVasive. I took anatomy, so it must have been with Robinson again.
Yep.
And we were able to do surgery on a cadaver to replace something in the spinal. And that was like another very real introduction into the science world. We also did stuff at the beach. And I think that moment, though, going and doing that was so incredible, because I'm like, where else as a high school student could you get there and be in like a medical field of sorts doing something so tangible? I think he honestly really impacted. I haven't been able to keep in touch with him, but I do think in the science realm, he did impact a lot. That's from his science classes, anatomy classes. I took anatomy as kind of an elective, but I loved it. Yeah. I loved it so much. It was hard, but I was just to learn more about the human body. I wouldn't have had an opportunity in college to do that. And so to get to dive into that was just feeding my hunger for knowledge and science. And that one specific instance of getting to do that pseudo surgery kind of was just a dream come true, honestly.
Yeah. We still send kids. We're doing it at Alpha Tech now.
Oh, really?
Company,
you guys are? That's
same
awesome.
Experience.
It's my gosh, it is so cool. When I would say that in college, like, oh yeah, my freshman year, I did this. They're like, you did what? Well, where did you go to school?
Actually, I'd love to ask about that. I mean, so you get to college and you're in science. Yeah. I mean, did you feel prepared? Did you feel ready for that? Yeah. What was that like?
I felt ready. But there is something that, unless I didn't take AP bio, so that was on me. So my freshman year, rolling up into a bio class, everyone else around me had taken AP bio. And I'm like, oh, all right, let's go. Let's do this thing. Like, what's photosynthesis again? But I was able to.
That's like the only thing I remember from biology. That is the only thing.
What's the mitochondria again? Oh, shoot.
Powerhouse of the cell. Two things. Although I think our biology teacher now says it's not just the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah, there's so much more.
Yeah.
It gets bad, there's more to them. Got to dig deep. Yeah. But I did feel prepared. There was definitely that foundation that was there. And I think more importantly, though, this place prepared me how to study hard and how to learn well. And while maybe there were gaps just for myself because I didn't take the AP class, and so just book-wise, I was missing a couple things, I was able to catch up so quickly and then excel because I knew how to be a good student. And I think that's really what impacted me here, was how to be a good student. Yeah. And that translated then on so many other aspects of my life. But I was able to study hard, dig deep, find certain groups that I could study with. I think here, was it Miss Pratt?
Yep, she's still here.
She changed, not to be dramatic.
No,
she
please,
changed
please
my life
dramatic.
In some ways. She did. I didn't know I had dyslexia until my junior year here, when I started to do all the standardized testings. Yeah. And I'm like, why is this so hard? Why can't I get good scores? She found, a place for me to do a testing, found out I had dyslexia, and I had been overcompensating for it my entire life, not knowing. And so I was like, why? That makes sense. Like, school is always hard. I always had to study X amount of more hours to get just like kind of an okay grade.
Right.
And she was able to get me extra time on testing. And then into college, I was able to get priority registration. And that honestly made a huge impact in my college career. I was able to research professors, see like what I would like, who'd be a good fit, really change my schedule, that I was able to set myself up to take classes that I wanted in times that were good and get extra help if I needed it. And it was at the time when I was here, kind of was like, oh yeah, sign this thing and I can take the SAT for extra time. And like, that's great for me. But then when I left, I was like, I still get, like, she was able to get me these benefits. Like, oh my gosh. And so that freshman year when I was applying for classes and it was like, oh, you can register a couple days early. That was so incredible. So I'm so thankful to her that she was able to do that for me.
Well, like, thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting because this happens, fairly regularly where we have a student in their sophomore, junior, even senior year that discovers something about themselves. Yeah. What was that like? I see it with kids now. There's sort of two ways. One, sometimes they get frustrated. It's like they don't want to be the person with dyslexia.
Yeah.
So no, that's not it. Yeah. It's not that. And then other times it feels like an unlocking of, oh my gosh, this is why I've had these things. Did you get either of those, both of those, something different?
I think you can definitely get frustrated because now there's like a quote unquote label on something and you're like, oh, I don't want to be put in this box of like, oh, now I check box, have dyslexia. But I think for me, it was a big sign of relief because ever since second grade, I was struggling. So I actually got held back a year, second grade, because I saw I was struggling in math. I'm an October baby, so I was kind of already on that cusp. So like, oh, well, maybe she's just a little too young. Yeah. Like, and so I, growing up, would just really struggle. And I remember so many nights doing, math with my dad, and he'd explain stuff. And I'm like, I just don't get it. And back when I was younger, too, I would miss recess because I was trying to still finish math problems and I just wasn't understanding. And so finally figuring out that, like, I just wasn't dumb in a sense. It was like, no, like my brain just works a little differently and it's not my fault. I'm trying to do the best I can and now I can get help was really, really impactful for me and kind of like a sigh of relief, like, okay, now I know what's going on. And I had just felt so defeated leading up until then. Like, you try so hard, you do the right thing, you understand the process, and then it comes to the test, you get your result, and you're like, this doesn't reflect how much effort I care about this to put in. And so to finally understand that was like, okay, then I now can pivot and work with it. But I also think there was some hidden benefits. I think my visual memory is great now, so I was able to compensate for that. And so that gives me strengths in other areas where people are like, how did you remember that? I'm like, I don't know. I had to just memorize how to read from sounds. And I think honestly played too into language as well. I think language has been a huge strength. And for French, going back to French, being able to pick up accents very well because I'm able to now mimic sounds and kind of repeat that. So it's so interesting how the brain works. Are really incredible. And sometimes when you're seen as a weakness, you've got a stronger strength and not to focus on the weakness, but you've been gifted another strength that other people may not have as well. So.
And I mean, no surprise, God makes us all on purpose. Yeah. And, even things that might appear different on one sense, obviously have their own strengths with them. And that's why he did it. So I just so appreciate your perspective on that. Yeah. So thank you. Well, okay, last thing. So since you work at SeaWorld, how many free SeaWorld tickets a year do we get now that we've done? Is this like
I actually have quite a few. They expire at the end of the year.
Oh, well, great. I have two little girls that would love to be inspired by a former Santa Fe student down there.
I'm always trying to pawn them off because they expire. And I'm like, who wants to go? Do you want to go?
I'll give you my email. We'll make it happen.
Yes. Honestly, absolutely. I didn't see your email till later about.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, oh, anytime.
No. Well, we appreciate it. More importantly, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing your perspective and so congratulations on all of your success. And
thank you.
We're super proud of you. So thank you, Faith Hillard.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and being able to kind of share 8 years worth of my life and how this place has impacted that and set the trajectory.
Well, it's our pleasure, and it still is because you're meeting with our students right now. So
still continues. The fun still continues.
Well, thank you, and thank you to those of you listening and or watching. If this is your first episode of our Eagle Perspective podcast, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, elsewhere podcasts are available. We also have video podcasts on YouTube. Got all kinds of topics for you to check out. So we look forward to seeing you again soon.